Growing up in a small town, the nights were always quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was the kind of quiet that made you notice every little sound, every creak, every whisper of movement. But one night, it wasn't just the sounds that broke the silence. It was something else. It started when I was sitting on my bed, scrolling on my phone. I lived in a one-story house, and my room was at the back, overlooking the yard. The window was open just a crack, letting in the cool night breeze. And then I heard it, a soft scrape. At first, I thought it was the wind brushing a branch against the house. But when I listened closer, it sounded different. A deliberate dragging noise, like something heavy being moved across the roof. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a raccoon or a stray cat. But as the scraping continued, I noticed something strange. The sound wasn't random. It moved, slowly, deliberately, across the roof, heading toward my room. I froze, my phone still in my hand, as the sound stopped right above me. And then there was a thud. It wasn't loud, but it was heavy, like something or someone had landed. I looked up at the ceiling, half expecting it to cave in. My heart was racing, every muscle in my body screaming for me to move, to hide, to do something. But I couldn't. The thud was followed by a soft, rhythmic tapping. Not at the window, on the roof itself, right above me. I don't know what made me do it, but I reached over and shut the window, locking it tight. As I did, I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That's when I saw it. A shadow, just a glimpse, moving across the edge of the roof outside. It was too large to be an animal, tall, with long limbs and a strange, hunched posture. For a moment it stopped, silhouetted against the moonlight, and I swear it turned its head to look at me. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. But then it started again, the scraping moving slowly toward the front of the house. I grabbed my phone, trying to call someone, anyone, but the screen froze. The signal was gone. The scraping stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing, just silence. And then 3 knocks, loud and deliberate, came from the front door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Who or what would knock after being on the roof? The knocks came again, harder this time, almost shaking the door. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted in place. But eventually, the knocks stopped. When I finally worked up the courage to check, the yard was empty. The night as quiet as it had been before. The next morning, I found deep scratches along the shingles of the roof and muddy footprints leading from the front door to the edge of the yard. They were too large to belong to any animal. I never found out who or what had been on the roof that night. But I moved out of that house not long after, and sometimes when the nights are quiet, I still find myself looking up, half expecting to see that figure again, perched on a rooftop, watching. I had just moved to a small town, looking for a fresh start. The quiet streets and cozy homes gave the place a calm, almost sleepy feeling. But it didn't take long for me to realize that this town had its own secrets. I moved into a modest house on the edge of town, close to a little park. Every morning, I'd walk past it on my way to work. The park was small, with a few swings, a slide, and some benches scattered under the trees. It was peaceful, and I'd often see kids playing there in the afternoons. But something always caught my eye, the empty swing. Every time I walked by, the swing would be gently moving back and forth, as if someone had just been on it. But no one was around. The ropes were old and frayed, and there wasn't even a breeze strong enough to make it move. At first, I thought I was just imagining things. Maybe the wind had caught it just right, or a child had been playing there and left. But as the days went on, the same thing happened. The swing would be empty, yet still swinging. One evening, I decided to sit on one of the park benches and watch for a while. I was hoping to figure out why it kept moving. After a few minutes of silence, I heard something. A soft, almost melodic sound. It was coming from the swing. I looked up, but there was no one there. The swing was still swaying slowly, and the sound seemed to grow louder. It sounded like someone singing, but the voice was soft, distant, like it was coming from the wind itself. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I stood up, my heart racing. I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, I heard the sound again. The voice was clearer now, and the air around me grew colder. It was almost as if the voice was calling to me, urging me to come closer. I turned around slowly. The swing was still moving, but this time it wasn't just swaying in the breeze. It was moving faster, like someone was sitting on it, pushing it harder. I took a few cautious steps toward it. The closer I got, the more I could hear that haunting, soft voice. So close now, like it was whispering just behind me. I stopped, my legs frozen. I couldn't bring myself to look behind me. I knew that whatever was on the swing wasn't something I wanted to see. And then, just like that, the swing stopped. The park was still again, and the air around me felt thick. I slowly turned, half expecting to see someone standing there. But there was nothing. The park was empty, silent as it always had been. I left without looking back, and I haven't gone near that swing since. But every time I pass by the park, I can't help but glance over. And every time I see it, the empty swing, swaying gently in the breeze. I never heard that voice again, but I know it's still out there, waiting. If these stories gave you chills, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the scariest stories are the ones that feel all too real.